They fired me on a Thursday. No warning. No investigation. No questions. Just a knock at the door of my classroom, 2 administrators in suits and stone faces. They waited until the final bell rang, let me finish my lesson on Gatsby's broken dreams, then walked in and quietly said, "Mr. Callahan, we need a word." That word was a death sentence. They didn't tell me why at first. Just said I was being placed on administrative leave pending an inquiry. I remember staring at the half-graded papers on my desk. Sarah Henley's essay was on top, ironically, about injustice in literature. I never got to finish reading it. The next morning, the local news ran a headline, "Beloved English teacher removed amid allegations." The word allegations hung in the air like a rotting carcass. Nobody said what I was accused of, but everyone assumed the worst. That's how it works. Truth doesn't matter. Hints are enough. It started with a rumor. A whisper in the hallway. Then a social media post from an anonymous account accusing me of inappropriate behavior. No details. No context. Just vague enough to go viral. And just like that, 20 years of perfect attendance, glowing evaluations, student awards, all gone. None of it mattered. I called the union. They said to keep quiet. Let the process play out. But the process wasn't built for men like me, quiet, aging, unmarried teachers with no kids and no political connections. It was built to protect image, not people. The school board made a statement. We take all allegations seriously. The principal, who once cried during my retirement speech rehearsal, wouldn't even meet my eyes. Parents stopped waving to me at the grocery store. One woman pulled her son away like I was contagious. I was never charged. The district settled quietly after internal resolution. But the damage was done. My name was stained. My license expired. I was labeled without a trial. And all because a teenage girl didn't like hearing no. Her name was Kayla Stroud. Senior. Top of the class. Daughter of Roland Stroud, developer, philanthropist, and the kind of man who donates a library wing to make himself feel clean. Kayla handed in a plagiarized paper half-copied from a Reddit essay. I called her out, gave her a failing grade, told her she wouldn't be valedictorian with that kind of laziness. She smiled when I said it. That same week, the rumor started. And it cost me everything. No one ever asked if I did it. They just asked why a girl like her would lie. They never asked what a man like me had to lose. But I had an answer. Everything. So I made a decision. If they were going to destroy my life over a lie, then I would destroy theirs with the truth. And I would take my time doing it. Kayla Stroud was the kind of student you're supposed to be grateful for. Polished. Poised. Parents with money and influence. She played cello, ran track, smiled on cue. The kind who gets mentioned at fundraisers and printed on alumni newsletters before she even graduates. I didn't hate her, not at first. She wasn't a bad kid, just entitled. The kind who thought rules were suggestions and consequences didn't apply if your father signed enough checks. Still, I held her to the same standard as everyone else. That was my mistake. It started during finals week. She turned in her senior term paper late, claiming she'd been sick. No doctor's note, no excuse, just a tight smile and the paper stapled neatly. I glanced at the intro and my stomach sank. I'd read it before. It was plagiarized. Not even cleverly. Whole paragraphs lifted from an online college prep forum. Word for word. I printed out the original source and marked the similarities. Then I did what I'd done a dozen times before with other students. I called her in after class. No accusations. Just questions. "Kayla," I said gently, "can you walk me through this part of your introduction?" She didn't blink. "Sure, I just worked really hard on it." "Because it's identical to this," I said, showing her the screen. She paused, tilted her head like she was deciding something. Then she smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile. It was cold. Calculated. "That's a really serious accusation, Mr. Callahan," she said. "I'm not accusing," I replied. "I'm asking." "Maybe I got inspired," she said, shrugging. "Who cares? It's academic dishonesty. So fail me." And I did. I failed her paper. She still would have passed the class, but she wouldn't be valedictorian. Not anymore. Not with that 0 dragging down her GPA. The next week, the rumor surfaced. At first, it was small. A whisper. A friend of a friend claiming I got too close to a few senior girls. Then an anonymous post on a student-run Instagram account, Mr. C's creepy side finally catching up. By the end of the day, the principal called me in. I remember the way he avoided my eyes. "Just a formality," he said. We have to respond. That night, Kayla posted a cryptic message on her private story. Truth always comes out in the end. The school never announced who accused me. They didn't have to. By the end of the month, I was gone. No trial. No hearing. No closure. She graduated with honors. I spiraled. But something broke through the fog a few weeks later. An email. A parent I barely knew forwarded me a voicemail their daughter had saved. Kayla bragging to a friend, he thought he could mess with me. Watch this. I played the voicemail every night for weeks. Not because I needed proof, but because it reminded me I wasn't crazy. She'd lied. Smiled through it. And won. But not for long. Because that voicemail was the seed. And I was going to grow it into her family's ruin. There's a strange silence that sets in after your life is burned down. At first it's panic calls from lawyers, friends who don't know what to say, family who suddenly aren't sure what to believe. But then it goes quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that eats at you. I spent weeks like that. Sitting on the couch, blinds drawn, surrounded by stacks of unopened mail and expired grocery receipts. My teaching license expired. No school would touch me. I applied for work at coffee shops, hardware stores, even a library. Nobody called back. My name was radioactive. At one point, I considered ending it. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. Just a thought that lingered while I held a bottle of sleeping pills and stared at the ceiling. Not because I wanted to die, exactly, but because I couldn't figure out what living was supposed to be anymore. Then I heard the voicemail again. I played it for the 100th time. Kayla's voice, smug and laughing. He thought he could mess with me. Watch this. That was the moment. The moment I realized I wasn't going to die. Not yet. Not before she paid. And not just her. Her father, Roland Stroud, he made it happen. He didn't care whether the story was true. He cared about optics. About headlines. About keeping his perfect little brand intact. He'd leaned on the school board. Funded a community investigation. Pressured people into silence. He wasn't a father. He was a weapon. And I was going to turn him against himself. But to get to him, I had to disappear. Not literally, but professionally. The world would always see me as Mr. Callahan, disgraced teacher. I needed to become someone new. Someone they couldn't trace back to the scandal. So I started over. I sold the car. Moved 2 cities away. Found a cheap rental with a back exit and no questions asked. I cashed out what little I had in savings and enrolled in a crash course certification program, finance and investing. I had the mind for it. Numbers always made more sense than people. I built a new identity. James Hartley. Clean-cut, soft-spoken, with a quiet smile and a fabricated resume that name-dropping the right boutique firms. I kept my head down. Took small gigs helping retirees manage portfolios, teaching weekend classes on personal budgeting. Within a year, I had referrals. Trust. Clients. Within 2, I had a reputation. I was exactly the kind of man Roland Stroud would respect. And I was going to use that respect to ruin him. Piece by piece. Brick by brick. Just like they'd done to me. The difference was I'd make sure they knew it when it crumbled. James Hartley was everything Daniel Callahan could never be: confident, upwardly mobile, charming without being slick. People like James. They invited him to country club brunches, asked his opinion on tax shelters, laughed at his dry jokes over scotch. It was all by design. My new office was modest but tasteful: frosted glass, minimalist furniture, a framed Wharton certificate I printed myself. No one ever questioned it. They saw what they wanted to see: a youngish, successful financial advisor who dressed well and spoke softly. Trustworthy. Educated. Polished. And most importantly, neutral. I never mentioned politics. Never posted opinions online. No social media, no noise. Just a trail of business cards, glowing Yelp reviews, and word-of-mouth buzz. I catered to a very specific demographic: old money and new trust funds. People who wanted their money to grow without needing to understand how. People who'd happily let someone like me handle the fine print. That's how I met the Weber's clients of a client. They were old tennis friends of the Strouds. I didn't mention I recognized the name. I just nodded politely when they said, "Roland's a genius with real estate. You'd love him." It took another 6 months, but eventually I met him. Not through a business pitch, but at a charity event, naturally. I donated anonymously to one of Kayla's mother's educational foundations, enough to get an invitation but not so much that it raised flags. The event was a museum gala. Wine, hors d'oeuvres, overpriced paintings. Roland was exactly as I remembered. Tall, broad, silver hair. A politician's smile stretched over a predator's mouth. He wore custom Italian shoes and held court in a circle of investors like a king among lords. I didn't approach him first. I let him come to me. "You're James Hartley?" he asked after someone made the introduction. "The guy helping the Webbers avoid capital gains?" I smiled. I just showed them some smarter options. That got his attention. We talked for maybe 15 minutes, enough for him to be intrigued, not threatened. I made sure to ask just enough questions to flatter him without seeming eager. When he asked if I had a card, I handed it over with just the right pause. "Reach out if you ever want to talk about legacy planning," I said. "You'd be surprised how many options get missed." He laughed. "You have no idea how long I've been telling my daughter the same thing." Bingo. That was the crack. The small but critical opening. Roland didn't trust banks, but he trusted people who reminded him of himself. And more importantly, he wanted his daughter to learn from someone like me. Within a month, I got the call. Kayla wanted to talk about starting her own portfolio. Her father thought it'd be good for her to learn. I said I'd be honored. She didn't recognize me, but I recognized her, and I was just getting started. Kayla had changed, but not by much. She wore her privilege with more subtlety now. Less glitter, more class. Designer dresses that didn't flash labels. A sleek hybrid car instead of the convertible her father bought her at 16. But her voice still carried that same smug undertone. Like she'd never lost a single battle in her life. She didn't remember me, not even a flicker. To her, I was just Mr. Hartley, the sharp, mild-mannered advisor her father recommended. We met at a coffee shop the first time, her idea probably to see if I passed the vibe check. She brought a new iPad, a $9 drink, and an ego the size of her father's empire. "I'm just looking to grow my own wealth," she said, with a rehearsed seriousness. "Not just live off the trust. I want to be taken seriously." I smiled. "That's a great mindset." She smiled back. "Most people don't think I'm smart enough for this stuff." "You aren't," I thought, but I nodded instead. "Then let's prove them wrong." The next few months were like carving a statue from marble. Slowly, methodically, I shaped our dynamic. I wasn't overly friendly. I didn't need her affection. I needed her confidence. I showed her charts, explained option strategies, made her feel clever for asking questions. I told her no when she made a bad suggestion, always gently, always with praise afterward. "You have good instincts," I'd say. "Just need to sharpen them." She ate it up. I introduced her to people, other young investors, some real, some not. Hired a fake assistant who fawned over Kayla's intelligence. Invited her to a few minor events with local business types where she could feel important, seen. Her father noticed. "Whatever you're doing," he told me over bourbon one evening, "keep it up. She's more focused than I've seen in years." "I just give her space to learn," I replied. That was the hook. I wasn't a threat. I was a mentor, a man Roland could trust to mold his daughter into the sharp, calculating heir he always wanted. Except I wasn't building her up. I was laying the foundation for collapse. Behind the scenes, I started collecting things. Passwords she reused. Details from our conversations. Hints about her father's business dealings. I never pushed. I let her offer scraps without realizing they were valuable. And bit by bit, I assembled the blueprint. She told me about a quiet property transfer her father did through a cousin, tax sheltering, barely legal. She showed me an old laptop she used in high school that still had old-school emails, some of which she never deleted, including one from the day after she got me fired. A message to a friend. "Guess who's gone? Told you I'd find a way, winky face." I screenshot it, dated it, saved it to an encrypted drive. She still didn't remember who I was, but she would. Just not before I turned her own family against her and made her beg for the truth. Kayla was easy to manipulate, not because she was stupid, she wasn't, but because she'd never been taught to doubt herself. Everything in her life had always confirmed her own narrative. She was smart, special, destined. All I had to do was introduce the smallest crack in that certainty and let her do the rest. It started with questions. Have you ever considered why your father trusts people like me but not you? I asked casually over lunch one day. We'd been reviewing a basic investment portfolio, and she was pushing to take more risks. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, you have good instincts, strong ideas, but he still calls me to double-check every move you make. I just wonder if he thinks you're not ready or if he doesn't trust you. She didn't answer, just stared down at her salad. I let the silence hang. From that point on, she second-guessed everything. A week later, she called me in a panic. Her father had canceled a meeting she'd set up with one of his real estate partners. He said it was too soon for me to be involved, she muttered. Like I'm some intern. I made a show of sympathy. That's frustrating, I said. But maybe he just doesn't know how capable you are yet. That night, she sent me a long email venting about how her parents never treated her like an adult. I didn't reply immediately. I let her stew. When I did respond, it was one sentence. Maybe it's time to stop asking for permission. From there, the descent accelerated. She started pushing back against her parents. Refused to attend family dinners. Took trips without informing them. Started investing in questionable startups just to prove she could. She told me about it proudly, each move a declaration of independence. Each mistake a wedge between her and her father. I encouraged her gently. You're building your own empire, I'd say. They don't have to understand it. Meanwhile, I nurtured Roland's growing frustration. She's impulsive, he told me over drinks. I worry you're filling her head with ideas. She wants independence, I replied. I'm just trying to guide her toward making smart choices. He sighed. If she screws this up, I can't clean it up again. I nodded like I understood. I didn't just want to destroy their relationship, I wanted to weaponize it. To make Kayla feel abandoned and underestimated. To make Roland feel betrayed and out of control. Each of them would see the other as the problem. And I'd be standing in the middle, trusted by both. Kayla started drinking more. Making mistakes. She posted a long Instagram rant about toxic families and narcissistic parenting, then deleted it hours later. But not before I screenshotted it. Everything she was unraveling, I was documenting. And the more isolated she became, the more she leaned on me. Her father, once her safety net, had become a wall. And I was the only door left open. Exactly where I wanted to be. The first leak was small, a whisper in a private Telegram group for real estate investors. It referenced internal financial irregularities at Stroud Holdings. Nothing specific. No proof. But enough to make Roland's rivals curious. Within a week, 2 former partners quietly pulled out of a joint development deal in Atlanta. I made sure Kayla saw the article. I thought your dad had that project locked in? I asked, sipping coffee like it was just small talk. She shrugged, but her eyes flickered. He doesn't tell me everything. Maybe he should. I dropped seeds wherever I could. In casual comments to mutual contacts, at brunches, at charity galas. People trusted James Hartley, especially when he spoke with concern, not condemnation. I've heard Roland's stretching the books a bit, I told a hedge fund manager during a golf game. Kayla's worried. Between us, I think he's hiding more than just tax issues. It didn't take much. Roland's name was a brand, and brands only need a few scratches before people stop buying. The second betrayal was louder. I sent an encrypted file under a dummy name to a reporter at a business news site. Inside was a cache of internal documents I'd compiled from Kayla's files and emails. Nothing criminal yet, but ethically gray. Multiple property deals funneled through offshore trusts, hidden interests in shell companies, money flowing in circles. The article dropped on a Wednesday morning. It didn't accuse, just asked questions. Stroud Holdings, strategic genius, or shady dealings? The backlash was immediate. Roland's office released a bland statement. All our financial dealings are fully compliant with federal regulations. But the board didn't buy it. Investors started demanding audits. Anonymous sources fed more tips to journalists. The wolves were circling. I watched it all unfold from a distance, never inserting myself. Just observing. Adjusting. Kayla was spiraling by now. Her father had stopped returning her calls. Her friends, sensing scandal, began ghosting her too. She messaged me one night, long, rambling, angry. He's making me look like a joke. He ruined my name. I responded with the soft cruelty of a scalpel. Maybe it's time people saw who he really was. She cried during our next meeting. I pretended not to enjoy it. Everything was collapsing. From the outside, it looked like a powerful man's empire was faltering under public scrutiny. But from the inside, it was a daughter tearing at her own foundations, desperate to be seen. And through it all, I never raised my voice, never revealed my face, just played the part of a friend, an advisor, a confidant, the one person Kayla still trusted. While I prepared the final act, the truth she buried years ago, the one I'd kept in a file named simply Confession. By autumn, Roland Stroud's world had gone from steel and glass stability to a sinking ship no one wanted to be seen on. The board of Stroud Holdings forced him into a temporary leave, citing pending compliance reviews, a quiet way of pushing him out without admitting what everyone already suspected. His empire was rotten from the inside. The markets responded immediately. Shares dipped, then plunged. Projects were frozen. Headlines screamed speculation. Roland tried to call in favors, contacts in media, politicians, even the mayor. But nobody wants to shake hands with a man whose hands look dirty. Meanwhile, Kayla became the public face of the fallout. She was already spiraling. Emotionally, professionally. I watched her retreat deeper into herself. She started skipping meetings, lashing out at people who questioned her. She'd lost any credibility she built under my guidance. Even the fake startups I'd helped her invest in turned to dust, folding one after another under the weight of her poor decisions. She came to my office one afternoon, visibly unkempt. No makeup, sweatshirt pulled over her knees like a child trying to disappear. "He won't even look at me," she said quietly. I said nothing. "He blames me for all of it, as if I dragged him through the mud." I paused before responding. "Maybe he's afraid of what you know." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "Just, if I were him, I wouldn't want you talking to reporters either." The idea took hold like a virus. Within a week, she was messaging journalists, hinting that she had information, that she'd been used by her father. I made sure every message got flagged and quietly forwarded to the very outlets already sniffing around. The story was writing itself. She was burning bridges now, publicly distancing herself from her father in interviews, positioning herself as a victim of his manipulation. She even cried on a podcast. "I just wanted to believe in him," she said, voice shaking. "But he treated me like a pawn." The internet, as always, was divided. Some saw her as a brave whistleblower. Others labeled her an opportunist. Neither opinion mattered to me, because behind the scenes, everything she was saying only drew more attention to the financial skeletons I had laid bare. And as Roland tried desperately to defend his reputation, his own daughter was handing me the matches. The media called it a corporate tragedy. I called it justice. But I wasn't done. There was still one piece left. The piece that tied everything together. The voicemail. The one where Kayla laughed, bragged, and admitted to ruining an innocent man. It had waited patiently on my hard drive for 6 years. And now it was time to let it speak. I uploaded the voicemail anonymously at 2:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. No fanfare, no tags, no threats. Just a link on a forum known for whistleblower leaks, accompanied by a single sentence. "Not everyone accused is guilty. Some are just inconvenient." The file was clear. Kayla's voice, unmistakable, young and smug. "He thought he could mess with me. Watch this." Followed by laughter. Then, "Mr. Callahan is about to learn why you don't screw with someone like me." I'd saved it for years, kept it encrypted, hidden, untouched. And now it was finally where it belonged. In the wild. Truth set loose like a wildfire with no windbreak. It took 12 hours for the internet to catch on, 24 for the audio to make its way to a few Reddit threads, and another 12 for it to hit mainstream Twitter. By the third day, it was viral. Former teacher exonerated by leaked voicemail from accuser. Kayla Stroud's scandal deepens. Evidence surfaces of false accusation. Talk shows debated it. Think pieces emerged. When cancel culture becomes character assassination, Conspiracy threads dissected every word of the recording. The audio was authentic. Every voice analysis confirmed it. I didn't watch most of it. I didn't need to. I already knew the ending. But Kayla didn't. She called me the day after it hit the news. I ignored it. She texted me 5 times. Please? Do you think I can fix this? I didn't know it would go this far. Then, are you there? I watched the messages pile up without responding. The fallout was swift and brutal. Her entire whistleblower persona collapsed under the weight of her own voice. Interviews were pulled. Magazine profiles vanished. Sponsorships for her supposed Women in Leadership Foundation dropped her like a hot stone. But it was Roland who cracked first. He went on live TV to clarify things, called the voicemail a youthful mistake, claimed he had no knowledge of her deception. No one believed him. In the public's eye, he was either a liar or a fool. Either way, his credibility was dead. Stroud Holdings' final investor backed out 2 days later. The empire had fallen. And my name? It never came up. They speculated, maybe a hacker, maybe an old friend of the teacher. But there were no fingerprints. No leads. No face to blame. Just a voice echoing from the past, proving that the truth always finds a way out. Kayla released a tearful apology video. 10 minutes of scripted guilt and crocodile tears. But no one cared anymore. She wasn't a symbol of resilience. She was a warning. And as the world turned its attention to the next scandal, I sat in my quiet home, poured a drink, and deleted the last backup of the voicemail. My work was done. All that was left was peace. Peace, it turns out, is a quiet thing. No fireworks. No standing ovations. Just silence. The kind that used to haunt me but now felt like home. The Stroud name was poison. Roland retired in disgrace, officially citing health issues. His assets were frozen pending multiple investigations. His former partners testified against him with shocking enthusiasm. He went from mogul to liability in under 6 months. Kayla, meanwhile, disappeared from public life. Last I heard, she deactivated all her social media accounts. A rumor floated through some business circles that she'd moved to Europe to reset. No one cared. Her 15 minutes were over and the world had moved on. But I hadn't. Not out of obsession, just closure. I watched their descent not with glee, but with the satisfaction of a craftsman watching the final brick fall exactly where it was meant to. And then I let go. James Hartley dissolved quietly just as he had emerged. I sold the office space, donated the furniture, forwarded client accounts to other advisors with pristine reputations. I kept only what I needed, my freedom and my anonymity. Daniel Callahan, disgraced teacher, no longer existed. In his place, I became no one. A man in the background. A shadow passing through a new city where no one knew my face or story. I taught again, not in a classroom, but through tutoring at a small literacy nonprofit. No paycheck. No headlines. Just kids who needed someone patient. It was enough. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Kayla had just taken the 0 on that paper. If she had owned her mistake. If Roland hadn't shielded her with money and silence. If the world had just listened. But they didn't. And so I made them. Not with violence. Not with threats. With truth. Crafted, sharpened, and delivered with precision. My revenge wasn't about rage, it was about balance. They tipped the scales once. I just put them back. And in doing so, I learned something most people never understand. Justice doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just needs to be inevitable. I never told anyone what I did. No one ever will. Because this story, like the people it brought down, isn't meant to be remembered. It's meant to be felt in silence. The kind that settles over a ruined empire. The kind that lasts. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you want to see next. See you in the next one.